Hello, it's Susan from the Noonan Carnegie Library, and I'm here with another stack of book recommendations for you. Today we're going to be talking about romance books. Now, romance books are always a lot of fun to read. It's a great way to just sit down and read a great book that makes you laugh. I prefer romance as like a romantic comedy, but there's also lots of great historical romance books. But I think today I only have contemporary romance books for you because that's what I've been reading lately. It's just really been enjoyable for me to sit down and read a book that just makes me happy. The best thing about romance books is you know they're always going to have a happy ending, so you can read them with the expectations that at the end you're not going to be sad. So let's start off with Roomies by Christina Lauren. Christina Lauren is one of my favorite romance authors. It's actually two women. One's name is Christina and one is Lauren, but they write together and their books are always like super fun and they make me smile. This one is really funny. It's about a girl who works in a theater that her uncle owns. He has put on this wonderful Broadway play that's very famous, and she's a little bit obsessed with this guy who busts in the subway. So she goes and she watches him play, and she just sees that he has so much passion for playing the guitar, and he's so good. And so circumstances come around so that her uncle needs someone to fill in for a Broadway production, and she decides that it's a great idea for this guy to do it. So she brings him in for an audition. He's awesome. He blows everybody away. And so they say, the job is yours. And he's like, well, he's Irish and he's overstayed his visa for 2 years, so I would love to get the job, but I'm here illegally. So our main character, Holland, is really sad. She thinks he's going to be great at this. She really owes her uncle a favor because he pays for her apartment, he's gotten her a job, and she really feels sad about it. So she comes up with a harebrained idea that the two of them need to get married so he can get his green card. So this is a comedy of errors. It's really funny, but there's also some really moving parts. I really enjoyed the family relationship in this one as well, the relationship that Holland has with her uncle. So this is really great. I highly recommend this one. And we're going to be talking a lot about the covers today because, you know, first of all, I love talking about covers. Covers are really important to me, but romance covers, or at least the ones I have today, are really, really pretty right now. We're in this phase where we have a lot of illustrated covers that are just gorgeously illustrated, so we'll be talking about it. This is not one of my favorite ones. It's a little boring, but this is a little bit of an older book, so that might be why. But this one was really good, and it definitely kept me laughing. The next one we're going to talk about is The Marriage Game by Sarah Desai. I really enjoyed this one. It's so funny. This is about Layla. She has moved from New York City. She's just broken up with her boyfriend, and she's come back to where her parents live in California. They run an Indian restaurant that's very world famous where they are, and she starts working at the restaurant, and she also decides that she wants to open her own HR consulting firm. And her father says, okay, we have a spare room upstairs that you can use as your office. Unfortunately, her father has a heart attack. Now, this happens at the very beginning of the book, so this isn't really a spoiler. And so when she goes into the office while her father's in the hospital recovering, he's in a coma, she finds some other person in there setting up his office, and she's like, excuse me, who are you? And it's Sam, and he has rented the office from her father, but her father neglected to tell her that someone else had already rented it. So they decide they have to share the office, but it's a very stressful situation. They're always fighting. And then one day, Layla discovers that her father has been trying to arrange her marriage. And she's a little shocked. He has set up appointments with 10 different suitors to come in and talk to her. Well, she starts thinking about all the boyfriends she's had over the years. She hasn't done a great job in picking them. So she's like, well, maybe my father has a reason to do this. So she decides she's going to honor her father's wishes and meet with these 10 people. And Sam offers to be her chaperone. So this is really funny. It's a lot about the different men they meet who, you know, are not the greatest. And so it's really funny to see them spar back and forth. And of course we can see where it's going, but this one is really fun and it's hilarious. It gets a little silly in parts, but I really enjoyed it. Next up, we're gonna talk about Meet Cute by Helena Hunting. Helena is another author that I really enjoy reading. And look how cute this book cover is. It's very cute. It reminds me of The Lady and the Tramp. This is a funny book. This is about a girl who is going to law school, and she runs into, literally, into this actor that she grew up watching who's now in law school. So that's how it starts out, of them in law school, and they have this interaction that quickly turns bad. So they end up hating each other in law school. She feels like he really took her spot in the law school where she graduated second in the class and he graduated first because he did something underhanded, or so she thinks. And this is the story of how they meet years later at her law firm when him and his parents come in and set up a trust for his little sister, who's much younger than he is. So this story takes a little bit of a dark turn, and there's lots of emotions in this one, and it's really sad in parts, but it's basically a story about how they try to help Dax's sister get through a really hard time in her life, and how they have to start trying to get along, even though they really don't like each other. As you can see, there's a lot of themes in these books about where they really don't like each other and then they fall in love. I think that's a very common trope in romance novels. People seem to really enjoy that. It's always fun to see people, you know, go back and forth and not like each other and then suddenly fall in love. That's a very common theme, and we'll probably find quite a few more of these in my stack. Next up, we'll talk about The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory. This book was so good. I laughed so hard. This reminded me a lot of different romantic comedy movies where basically you need like a fake date to get through a wedding. Drew needs a date to his ex-fiancee's wedding, and so he meets Alexa and they decide to go as each other's date. So this is what the book is about. It's hilarious. It's funny to see the hijinks as Drew and Alexa pretend that they're dating, and then of course we know what happens eventually. But this one is so great. I recommend any of Jasmine's books. They're all really good. We probably have another one of these in the book stack as well, but I highly recommend this one. And next up, we have another Christina Lauren book. I told you I loved her. This is Twice in a Blue Moon. This is a story about Sam and Tate. They meet on a vacation and they fall in love and they have a glorious 2 weeks. And then at the end of 2 weeks, they part ways due to a misunderstanding. And then we fast forward 14 years in the future, and suddenly Tate is a world famous actress and she's on set, and suddenly there's Sam. So she has to confront their past, the feelings that they had back then, and she has to learn to figure out if what he did really broke her trust or if she can learn to forgive him. So this book was really good. This had a lot of feeling and depth to it. It made you really think, and it also made you happy because it's a romance and they make you happy. And I love this cover. It's real pretty. I love a moon and star motif. But I highly recommend this, just like I would for any of their books. They're so good. Next up, we're going to talk about The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang. This book was really fun. It's about Stella. She works in statistics, so she has a very mathy mind, and she's always thinking about numbers, and she's a very practical person, and she realizes she has one big deficit, and that's she doesn't know anything about romance. She hasn't had very much experience with that. She's been so focused on her career and her schooling, and she realizes she doesn't really like to even date. Men make her a little uncomfortable, so she decides she needs to become more adept at dating and meeting men. So her solution to that is to hire someone to teach her how to do it. So Michael Fawn is a martial arts expert, handsome, suave, and he sweeps in and agrees to teach her how to be more comfortable with men. So she comes up in her pragmatism with a lesson plan, and he's kind of like, okay. So she comes up with a lesson plan, and they have to go through and check off all these lessons as she becomes more adept to romance. So this one is hilarious. I laughed so hard while I was reading it, but it's also very sweet. The cover's great with a little mathematician stuff on there, but I highly recommend this one. I really enjoyed it, and it definitely made me smile. We have another one of Helen's books, The Bride Test. So this is a story about Kai, and his mother decides he really needs to get married, so she wants to arrange a marriage with him with someone from Vietnam. So she goes and flies over to Vietnam and finds this beautiful young woman, Esme. She lives in a really poor house, and the chance of marrying an American, she jumps at it. She said, yes, I absolutely will do that, even though it's an arranged marriage. Well, she meets Kai, and he's very handsome, but he's a little off-putting to her at first, so she's like, well, I don't know if this is gonna work out. But this is a really sweet story. story. I enjoy Helen's books because she has autism, and so she writes about people who have autism. I appreciate the way Helen brings in diverse voices to her books, not just in that she portrays people of different nationalities, but also people who have autism or other disabilities. So this one was really great, and I really like the cover. Next up, we have Things You Save in a Fire by Catherine Carter. This book was really enjoyable. It had a really beautiful romance in it, but there was also a lot about loss and finding a new home and coming to terms with relationships you have with your family. Cassie is a female firefighter in Austin, Texas. She loves her job. She has a great situation in Austin. Everyone welcomes her. One day her estranged mother calls her and says that something is wrong with her eyes. She's not able to see very well, and can Cassie come and help her? And Cassie's like, I really love my job. I don't really want to move and try to find another job. And her mother's like, please. And she decides she just has to do it and be there for her mother, even though her mother was not always there for her. So she ends up having to move to a new fire station. Well, this fire station in the north is not as great as her one in Austin. They're not happy about having a woman come there. She faces a lot of adversity, and it's just not as great a situation. So this is a story of how she has to come to terms with being in a new situation and coming to terms maybe with a little bit of misogyny that she didn't have to face before. And also, there's a handsome rookie. It's funny because they call him the Rookie for like most of the book, so you don't find out his name, and I think that's just a super fun thing. I really enjoyed that. But this book was really good. It had a lot of heart and depth to it, so I highly recommend this. I am definitely going to read more of Catherine's books because I enjoyed this one so much. Next up, we have The Honeymooners by Christina Lauren, another Christina Lauren book. This one is one of their newest ones. This is hilarious. I love this book so much. This is a book about Olive. She is the maid of honor in her sister's wedding. Unfortunately, she has to spend the day with her arch enemy, Ethan Thomas, who is the best man, and she's not looking forward to it. Well, her sister has gotten almost her whole wedding financed by all these contests she entered, and unfortunately, she got all this free seafood, and it gives everyone food poisoning except Olive and Ethan. So they have this fabulous honeymoon, and so they have to go on the honeymoon and pretend to be together. It's classic romance trope, but I loved it. It was so funny. It was another enemies to lovers book. I really enjoyed it. I love fake relationship books. I think they're always so funny. You always kind of know where they're gonna go. They can be a little predictable at times, but this one was really enjoyable. So, and this cover is really fun and colorful. So I enjoyed that one. Next up, we have The Trouble with Hating You by Sajani Patel. This is a story of a young Indian American woman, Laya. She goes to her parents' home for dinner, and she gets ambushed by her parents. They're trying to hook her up with a man, Jay. They think she needs an arranged marriage because they're like, you really need to get married. Her father is not a nice man, and he really is like, you really need to get married. You need to have children. You need to be traditional. And her mother's kind of one who sits in the corner and just does whatever the father tells her to do. So the father's behavior is pretty disturbing at the beginning of this book. But as the young man and his mother show up, she's like, I'm out of here. I don't want to arrange marriage. And she leaves the house and proceeds to run over the young man in the process. His name is Jay, and he's very insulted by her behavior. He thinks it's really disrespectful to his mother and also her parents, and he's very disturbed by it. So this book is about how they keep encountering each other because they're in the same community. So it ends up that Leah and Jay work together, so they have to see each other every day, and it ends up that he's trying to save her company from getting closed, and she has to end up working really hard to try to save the company as well, so they end up working together a lot of late nights, and they get to know each other that way. So this is a story of how they go from really disliking each other again to really enjoying each other's company. So this one was great, and let's look at this cover. This is a beautifully designed cover. I love the border around here and how they're looking at each other and they really don't like each other. This one was so fun. I really enjoyed it. Next up, we're going to talk about Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. I really enjoyed this book. It's about Chloe Brown, of course. Chloe is a chronically ill computer geek self-professed, who really decides she wants to start doing some reckless things because she always is at home working on her computer stuff, and sometimes if she overexerts herself, she gets really sick and she has to stay in her house and in her bed for days. So she decides she wants to start having some adventures. So Chloe decides she needs someone to teach her how to be a little more reckless and have some fun. So she decides to hire her neighbor, Red. And so he shows her how to ride a motorcycle, how to go camping, how to travel the world with nothing but a backpack. So they make this whole list of things to do, and they start going through and checking it out, and they learn to like each other in the process. This book was so fun. I loved it. It was really cute. It's funny, as so many of these books are, and I really enjoyed this one. Let's talk about Take a Hint, Dani Brown. This is the next one in that series, and this is about Chloe's sister, Dani. This one is also good. This is about Dani, who works at a college, and a security guard, Zafar. They have a fire drill, and it goes very wrong, and Zafar ends up having to carry Dani out, even though it's just a drill, and so she has to be rescued by him, and all of a sudden it goes viral on YouTube. This one is so funny. I enjoyed the interplay between Dani and Zafar, and it's just really funny where they have to fake a relationship in order to get more attention for Zafar's charity. So it's just really funny. Once again, I like a little fake relationship book. They make me laugh. So those two books are great. Next up, we have Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is about Henry and Alex. Alex is the son of the President of the United States, and Henry is the son of the Queen of England. So they meet, and they immediately are attracted to each other, and they end up getting photographed by the paparazzi. So all of a sudden, they're all in the tabloids, and they have to come up with a plan of how they can have a relationship, because it reminds me a lot about like the Harry and Meghan relationship, how, you know, Meghan was an American and Harry was the prince. So I really enjoyed this. Look at this cover. This is a beautiful cover. Love the title of the book. This one is a really, really good book. I laughed so hard. It's very funny. So definitely check that one out. Next up, we have another Jasmine Guillory book. This is The Proposal. This is the sequel to The Wedding Date, so it has some of the same characters in it. This is a story about Nicole. She's at a baseball game with her boyfriend, and suddenly on the big screen, he proposes to her. She's horrified, as every woman should be. Big screen proposals are horrible. And she's like, we haven't been dating that long. He's an actor. He's a little full of himself. And she's like, I don't want to be with you. So she turns him down, and it becomes kind of a scandal. So it's on all these news stations, and she's just like, oh no. She's become a story. So Carlos is at the game, and he sees her, and he comes and tries to rescue her, and he whisks her off. And they end up really liking each other, and they end up being able to hang out together, and they fall in love, and it's very sweet. And I really liked this book. It is funny because the proposal happens at the beginning, and it's a very quick part of the book, but it's a good name, and I really like this fun illustrated cover as well. So I highly recommend any of Jasmine's books. We have them all here at the Carnegie, so check them out. So that's all the books I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed all these romance books. Let us know if you've read any of these in the comments, or if you have your own favorite romance book. Let us know, and thanks for joining us today.